indie artists are becoming way more powerful, turning down lots more deals. Major labels are losing market share and losing very big name artists to just the idea that they don't wanna. And the narrative of not wanting is becoming way bigger. And then you have all these artists composing a brand through multiple mediums of expression. So I think that's a good snapshot of like where things are right now. The music industry seems to be slipping out of control of the incumbents. And the reason it is because these kids, man, they don't need you.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by IndiePRO.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to the Creative Juice podcast. This is episode 256, and this is going to be a really fun one. I'm your host, Jack McCarthy. With me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. Ed Isola, and we're joined today by a very special guest, our teammate, Kyle Circa Lemaire. Welcome back to Creative Juice, sir. We're going to be talking about independent music. Since the three of us are people that are steeped in independent music, we're going to be talking about kind of the state of things in 2023 and beyond today. Cirque, welcome back to the show. Happy to have you here, sir.
What's up, guys?
What's going on?
Woo. It's not much. Good to see you, gang.
Good to see you too. Good to see you too. Thanks for being here.
Of course.
When we first jumped on to talk about this, we were brainstorming ideas of like giving an idea of what's happening at IndiePRO and what's going on with Creative Juice and what we're going to be planning this year and what's happening at IndieX and kind of a general state of things here. But we were kicking it around kind of pre-roll and sort of looked inward and said, like, why don't we talk about the state of things everywhere with independent music and what we're kind of seeing from our vantage point, hopefully to give you guys some insights into, how we're viewing the world that probably a lot of other people are looking at as well and wondering, where do I go and what do I do? And maybe give some insights into things that we're seeing to be helpful and things that might kind of help you move up the next level as you evaluate your independent music. So I'd love to kick this off with like, where are you at, Cirque? What's going on with Some Kid Punk? What's the landscape of independent music look like for you? Hard questions to kick it off.
Yeah. Well, so Some Kid Punk, my group, we had, I had a baby late last year. And so Some Kid Punk took a nice little break. And we're like literally getting back on releasing later this month or early next month. But it's been going steady. We're over 5,000 followers. Spotify monthly listeners didn't take too much of a hit. And so we're just getting back to like releasing content. And then I also like digested a lot of content on TikTok and Instagram during that time and feel like I have a good idea of how we want to approach content in a new way this year and just, make a good showing. Overall, I feel really good about indie music. When we started, indie artist market share was around like 20% or a little bit below that. Now it's at like 30%. If you go dollar for dollar, you include those who are distributed through majors but are indie, it goes up more like 40 to closer to a half. And if you look at, we did a little bit of content on this recently, but if you look at like major label profits and major labels' ability to generate revenue, it's actually really down when you adjust it for inflation.
Inflation, yeah.
So it's down a lot, but indie artists continue to grow. So like that's great. And then there's just like so many, because of TikTok, because of, tons of just like really accessible resources for artists. Tons of artists are choosing not to go with majors and are like able to gain really massive followings without majors. And so that's really sick from my vantage point. That's kind of my whole bent on this thing and, why I do what I do. So that's really encouraging. And I've seen so many inspiring cases. One of my favorites right now is La Russell, of artists who are not only like not signed, but are very self-aware about not being signed. And it's a conscious decision, and that's really cool. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
It is really cool. And I mean, we've even had stories within the last 6 months in our community and on our team too of people actively turning down record label deals, actively turning down management deals that they were just like, nah, this isn't good for me. And if you're not going to sweeten the deal to make it good for me, then I'm fine. I'm fine doing what I'm doing. And that's a big difference between, maybe what you and I would have had a conversation about 4 or 5 years ago.
For sure. Yeah. People have options now.
Yeah.
And all you really, because you don't need a lot to not take a record deal. You just need any other option. It's like pretty much a no-brainer after that. So it feels like, what we set out to do is really, maybe, with some help from us, or maybe just, entirely randomly. I like to think that we had a small part in it, is like, people have options. Got options. So that's awesome.
Well, I feel like what's cool about the whole you have options thing, like you said, it's funny. If you have literally any other option, you can take it. I think what's cool about where independent music is right now is that it's solely like your success to me is dependent on like, is the music good? Do you know how to make content? So Cirque, when you were like, well, we haven't put songs out for a little bit, but I've been digesting a lot of content on TikTok and Reels and stuff. What I heard was like, oh man, Cirque's about to make some great content. Yeah, like he understands, like you've spent time. I think last time we talked about it, you're like, I don't really spend much time on TikTok, and it's like, oh, okay, well now you've spent time, so you kind of have a better grasp of, oh, what kind of videos work? What kind of copy on screen work? And so like, I'm excited to see that. I think that you guys will have great success because it's like, you understand marketing, you have good music, and now you have a better grasp of what kind of content potentially works and how to apply it to your filter or to your music. That's really all you need to have like a lifeline of like, okay, well, I'll just keep rolling the dice on myself and keep getting better at content. And then it just stacks on itself. Like, I don't think that a record label is going to come in and be the one that's like, we got your content and brand.
They're just going to tell you to make content.
Right, exactly. And so like you still have to figure out on your own how to do it.
It's gonna be like you can release your records when you make more content.
Yeah. No, it's funny but true.
That's a good point you bring up, Ed, about digesting the content. And I've had a couple conversations with some of our clients in a very, very similar vein. Even people who were somewhat averse to like short form content, TikTok, Instagram Reels, who over a few months' time, in the midst of doing everything else that they were doing, said to me like, yeah, like I've been spending more time paying attention to this and I'm actually starting to enjoy it, or I'm starting to actually find like where my lane might be in this kind of new path to walk down. And I think that there's an important takeaway there for artists to be like, care a little bit more about social media. And I know that that's like a dangerous thing to say.
Well, no, that sucks. Like, it sucks to think about that.
Yeah.
When you phrase it like that, that sucks.
The way to phrase it is just go spend more time on TikTok. And I think that's what you're getting at, Jack, where it's like, to me, I spend so much time on there, but TikTok filters through the content that I want to see, which is very closely related to other folk artists. And so just by being on the app, a lot of times I'm seeing musicians and I'm like, oh, that's an idea. And so like, to me, the phrase care about social media is like, just spend more time on it. You don't even have to be that conscious of like taking notes and like, oh, that was a great post. It's just like, you absorb it, I feel like.
Yeah. And I recognize that like, it's almost a controversial take especially in a creative space where it's like, don't spend too much time on social media, value your mental health. And I'm not trying to rail against any of those ideas, but like, maybe pay a little bit more attention, just a little bit of focused intention.
Yeah, like being on it sucks, but you can.
I love it.
I mean, it doesn't suck for everybody. For me, it sucks. Like, I made a video about this for YouTube recently. The video is just like, I hate content. I hate watching people on social media trying. I hate it. I go and I watch them, and it's just like this cheese dick, like, facade, and I'm just like, I hate this. I hate that you're doing this.
That's actually interesting because I also hate content where people try. Like you said,
Yeah,
I hate
yeah.
kind of where people try. The content I love watching is stuff where it's just like the fan finder type stuff where it's like, oh, it kind of seems
Yeah.
like they're just messing around and they got this great take. And so I think that's like
Yeah,
an
yeah.
interesting thing of like, if you are watching, what to keep an eye out for. Because yeah, it would suck to open up TikTok and have to watch an hour worth of videos of people just in their car being like, "This is my new song," you know. Like,
But it's like there's this meta self-referential aspect of it where like everyone's on there and they know what they're doing and they know what they're trying to do. And some will even comment on the fact that they are trying to do it or how to do it better. And it just kind of sucks. And I get that for most like artists, it's going to suck. And also it sucks like just flatly, it's kind of sucks that like if you're not in this space of like, I'm really interested in figuring out what content is cool and then replicating it, it sucks for you to have to go do that. But like, I think we're circling the drain on the team of like a strategy of content generation where it's like, find your niche on the platform. Even saying niche, like I want to stab my own eyes out, but find your type of music on the platform and then train the algorithm on you so that you're only getting that, and then find stuff that's performed really well and just notice what the gimmick is. Like, what's the hack that was used to do this? Was it that they put text on the screen? Was it a setting? Was it, you know, some kind of like thing about the camera motion? What contributed to this doing well besides the song? And then you compile a list of like all those aspects and you try them all. The cool thing about social media today is that like it used to be like, I'm going to make this piece of content for this one song and it's this song's content and they're linked and they're one-to-one. And now it's like, for every song you have that's reasonably well received, like go make a bunch of. You don't have a video for this song. You have videos that you're constantly trying.
Ed's talked about this so many times on the show, so he's probably like lighting up right now.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure.
oh, I'm sure.
Mr. TikTok knows how to TikTok.
I'm sure. I don't know anything about TikTok. I just like to watch it and it go on for like 3 hours too long every night. But what is funny about that is you're like, oh, okay. See what works and replicate it. It's really not that different from like any other kind of marketing that I feel like we've done historically. So that's like an encouraging thing to me. The very funny thing about TikTok is like all the testing you just said, what I've seen other people do is like you're searching. As soon as you find a 15-second sound clip that works, it's like someone told me you should have 40 videos with that sound clip once you find one that works. Like, doesn't matter what the videos are, just like on your page, showing your life with that video with the audio being the main thing. And I see that work so often with folk artists and rappers, and it's just like it takes the creativity out of it once you figure out what works. And it's kind of a little bit of an eye roll.
Here you see artists like the same song they're promoting for a month or 2 months, or their whole time on TikTok they've been promoting this one song, it seems, and there's like 80 videos with all different clips of this song, and they try a million different things on this one clip. So just to operationalize that, it's like, I too hate being on social media. I don't like it. I don't like watching other people. But if you can then decide, I'm not going to become this person who loves that, but I'm going to take this step-by-step challenge of, okay, I got to train the algorithm to find stuff like me. I've got to take extensive notes of what's working, what's actually getting a response in that niche. And then I have to use those notes to create a set of videos and then try all that. Now it's like a homework project rather than like become this like goo person, you know? Like,
it's funny because we haven't really talked about this before we started recording this. And what you just outlined is exactly what I've done, but as somebody that likes it. So it kind of feels like whether you like it or you don't like it, the process is the same. Like, find videos that work, like them, write down what works about them, try to make them for yourself. And it's kind of encouraging that you at least have a path forward if you're listening of like, well, I know what to do, you know, like whether you want to do it or not.
That's a good distinction to make of like, whether you like it or you don't, like, here's the step-by-step to take when it comes to trying to find your content, lever to pull.
It's easy to get intimidated because there are these people who love being on TikTok and they love it, and they're cheesy, and they just have like nothing to share with them existentially, and they're just really good at it, and they are that person, and you can replicate that without having to like somehow become that. So I think that's important. And to tie this back to the state of like what it is to be an indie artist these days, CD Baby recently did a podcast on like what to expect in 2023, or like what's new about music industry, and they were mentioning that like kind of our thesis with Full Stack Creative, that like soon or now it will no longer be possible to be this like one-dimensional creator. You should have at least some preference, if not an outright skill, in all of the visual arts and auditory arts. Like you should try to expand your skill set out to video or graphic design or whatever, and writing, because no one needs just a musician anymore when they can get rich multimedia experiences from someone who's just like you somewhere else in the world. And so I think that's true. For a lot of people, that's gonna suck. But it is true. It is true.
You and I talked about that a while ago, the last time that you were on the show, talking about being a public figure and what that entailed. And I think that it's only becoming more true as time goes on, is like being multidimensional is going to be so important. And I want to say this is like an encouraging point to our musicians and our artists that are listening, is like, you're already a multidimensional person. You just don't want to showcase it. Like you are. We've talked about that plenty on the show when we were talking recently about storytelling. I'll make sure to link to that in the show notes so that you could check that episode out if you didn't. But Ed and I talked about storytelling and why it's so important to share, varying aspects of you. And so like the multidimensional element, like to take that a bit further than just your skill set, like if that's intimidating, the idea of like, oh shit, like I can't be a video editor. I don't know anything about that. But there are other things that you do know about. And that's what people are going to be interested in. Or those are areas that people can be interested in. Your people can be interested in.
Well, it's fortunate for, everyone out there who doesn't want to become like a videographer, that like the culture and the landscape has shifted to where you can just be prolific with this. It doesn't have to be a, mirrorless camera. You can use a cell phone, and that's perfectly palatable to great scale these days. But like, look at Ed, right? Like Ed, you made the 502's website, and you source and approve all the designs for your merch.
Yeah.
And you write a lot of the copy, right? Okay. So bam. Those are like 3 very disparate skills that don't include being sick at music. And like you have to, I would imagine that like it wouldn't be the same if you didn't have one of those in place,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, it's just stuff that I've learned. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff 5 years ago, and so it's like, I feel like what's encouraging is it's like, well, everything that I know how to do today, and probably the same for you guys, came from, dang, we need a website, and you know what? I don't have $5,000 to spend on a website, so I better learn how to build it. That kind of stuff. It came of necessity, and so I think that that's encouraging too. And it's not like I go out on social media and I'm like, watch me build this website, right? That's not part of the brand, but it's a skill that I have that allows the 502s to continue to grow.
And allows you to have a cohesive brand across all of these things, right? Like you decided, everything about what the brand should be, and you're expressing that through these multiple different mediums. And I think that's where artistry is in 2023, is that you have to express this brand through multiple mediums. And at first it's going to, like, if you look at Some Kid Punk and you go through our IG, it looks like a zine. Like it's just like a mishmash of different styles and things. And a lot of it's like, I would do way differently today. And it's going to take that. But as this brand coalesces, like the key person who's learning about what it is supposed to look like and what they want it to be is you. And you need to be able to just regurgitate that out through a website experience or your merch or an offer or a copy or whatever, and your social media. So yeah, I think that's a key component. Okay, so indie artists are becoming way more powerful, turning down lots more deals. Major labels are losing market share and losing very big name artists to just the idea that they don't wanna. And the narrative of not wanting is becoming way bigger. And then you have all these artists composing a brand through multiple mediums of expression. So I think that's a good snapshot of like where things are right now. The music industry seems to be slipping out of control of the incumbents. And the reason it is because these kids, man, they don't need you.
The kids, man. That is true though, that it's like I don't think that, whether it's myself or people at IndieX I work with, a lot of artists are the same way, where it's like when they come on to IndieX, it's like, well, I'm coming on because I know how to do everything now and I just physically don't have the time. And so it feels like you reach this place as an independent artist where, I guess if I think about what a record label does, right, they probably just give you the things.
Give you money.
They give you money, and they give you a terrible loan, yeah. But they give you like, oh, we'll build your website, we'll do this, we'll do that, and it's stuff that like if you take your
won't though.
Right, exactly. But that's what they say, right? You're right. But it's done. They don't do that, but they say they will. And if you take the time and learn that, what we've kind of done is like we have a 5 or 6 person band, right? Like we've just started to outsource that inside the band, and kind of how that came about was like I learned everything. I was like not like, oh, I'm so great, but I was like I learned all these things, and then I started teaching Joe and I started teaching Matt, and they have their own proficiencies, but it's like, oh well, we kind of formed our own little management record label group where it's like Joe's running our social media, Matt's running our website now, and it's like
sounds a lot like you could just remove all the terms that have specifically to do with music, and it sounds a lot like a startup business.
Yeah, exactly.
You learned everything, and then you taught it to people and built up their skills, and now you have more output productively.
Yeah, and we retain a lot of ownership, and like the only reason I could see somebody saying like, oh, I want to go with a record label is if they're like, well, I'm done. I don't care. I'm cashing in, and like, so be it, right? But like for us, we're like, oh, we want this to be a lifetime thing, so we're not about to give away 70% of this business. And I think that's what's exciting about it, is that like,
what a weird way to cash in, though.
yeah, you know, I'm just like saying if they're like, I don't care anymore, you know, that kind of thing. Like I'm closing it down, but I don't know. It's interesting and it's exciting.
It's really cool. So yeah, the state of indie artistry is such that like I feel really good about our longer term mission of sort of reversing the top heavy music industry and giving indie artists more power. And the ways that is expressed are a lot different for IndiePRO today than they traditionally have been. Like, you know, IndieX started as like, you know, one employee, one client, and really just running the strategies that we more so teach today. So like the things we teach you how to do today, we would do for someone who is just starting out. And the agency has really grown to be a mechanism for IndieX, X-Men. It's creating X-Men. It's giving people the leverage that they would need to not sign these predatory deals. And it's taking indie artists who are very large already and giving them more revenue, and even taking legacy artists on. And so I think we're able to attack the problem from multiple dimensions. The problem of people who might be on the cusp of signing with a major or might already be with a major, we can provide them like alternative revenue sources, like sources.
An out.
Yeah, an option. They can get an option. Well, just to say that like at the training level, we really focus a lot more now on just initial sales and marketing, you know, skills, and then growing a fan base. I would say training is predominantly growing a fan base and then first monetization, you know, and then our coaching program, which has just gotten so much more ridiculous over the last year in terms of like what it's able to do for people, really attacks this middle level of like, you're not at the level yet where you should hire IndieX and outsource your marketing or outsource your revenue creation, but you know a lot, and maybe you could like, it's really preparing them to be what you were, Ed, in the beginning of the 502s. It's just like, I learned everything. It's like teaching them everything. And now they like, a key example is an artist here in Orlando, Kat Ridgway, came on to Indie Founder, and like she outsold her headliner on her tour, using her own hands in digital marketing, so
Yeah, so amazing.
right. And she can go do that now. She doesn't need us to do it. She has that skill. And so it's really cool to see us able to, like, it's more well defined now how we're able to address these issues and churn out, more people who have that capability. So
I was just last week having a conversation with someone, with an artist that was interested in IndieX, and was having a conversation with them about what they were looking to do. And essentially they were saying like, yeah, like we've got a tour coming up. We want to, run ad campaigns for it, and we'd like to have you guys do it. And I knowing what their budget was like, it doesn't make financial sense for you guys to have an agency do it. What you should do is have a guiding hand on strategy to walk you through doing it over 3 months, and the 3 months of your tour or whatever it is, and then you will have that skill that you can pull out of your pocket whenever you want. That's what you need. And that's Indie Founder, which is probably the direction that they're going to end up going, which is really cool. Exactly the same thing. It's like build the muscles so that you can do this kind of stuff on your own, but it doesn't necessarily involve you having to go through, courses and stuff. It gives you a middle way.
yeah, and we're bringing a little bit of that. We're blurring the lines a little bit between training and coaching now, where the newest thing in IndiePRO is that every month we have an activation workshop where one of our team, someone who's strategy at IndieX or someone who's a coach at Indie Founder or both, is coming and teaching a very specific executable to all of our IndiePRO members, which is sick because like we found out last year at some point that like a lot of the people who sign up for IndiePRO don't log in and take the training. So they're in the community or they just never do. They just forget or whatever. And then like offboard later on. And it's like, how do we solve that? And when we saw Indie Founder just doing like so much in terms of making an impact, it was like, how can we bring that to IndiePROs and give like a more live feel? So now we have these monthly workshops, and it's been great. Like Andy taught how to run a Black Friday sale. I taught how to create a sales page for a merch product. And then I taught email marketing, like sales automations. And then I believe when this comes out, it will be like a week after, but we're running a workshop on basically growing your Instagram following and your Spotify following at the same time with a specific ad campaign type. And then next month, Andy will be talking about self-booking tours, which is amazing because in our community, we have these people like Andy and like Ed who have risen up to the point where they can turn down a record label deal. And Andy's pathway there was through touring. He just used Facebook advertising to sell out tour after tour. And now, his exact process for self-booking without a booker, without a promoter, we can pass that on to indies. So I think the workshops have been super encouraging in terms of attacking it again at a different level of saying like, how can we imbue you with these skills?
Part of the reason that I'm so excited about going into a workshop sort of cadence in our community is I think something that differentiates indie music now, this present moment, versus 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, whatever it might be, is now we're in a space where there's a lot of information, right? Like there's tons of stuff out there. There's tons of resources. There's tons of training and courses and coaches and gurus, and some of it has way more merit than others. And there's so much out there that now, as opposed to years ago, when you would talk to an artist and it would be like, I just don't know where to start. I just don't know what to do. There's not good information out there for me. Now it's like, there's so much information that I don't know what to do. And I'm paralyzed by all of it. And I have so many conversations like that, even with, people who potentially want to come on board at the agency who have just been so stuck because they're like, well, there's a ton of stuff out there and I don't know what to work with. Some of it's outdated. It doesn't feel dynamic to me. And so I'm really excited for us to be in a place of like being able to problem solve in almost real time and really look at like what are we talking about? What's our community talking about? And how can we attack it together?
Yeah. It's also like you see something in a course, it's different from hearing it from the person and getting them to clarify like why they're saying this. Cause like, I was on YouTube the other day and I follow this YouTuber who's awesome. I won't name their name because of what I'm about to say, but like I follow them because they are awesome. But they've been running to grow their Spotify like ads, right? And they ran a bunch of like separate ad campaigns where they put all their trigger cities like Sao Paulo, Brazil, and what have you. And they're like, I keep my data separate so that I have clean data here. And then like just released a video a few weeks back that was like, I fucked up my data. Like this was wrong. Like I've been doing this for 2 years. This is a bad idea. And I was like, dude, we literally say not to do that. And I think it's born of this idea of like, just because you read something, or even if you paid for a training and you watched someone say it, doesn't mean that it really hits home. So like the more that we can provide tactile face-to-face, like, no, dude, I'm telling you, do this because this. Like, I think that's only going to help prevent just sort of bad strategy. Like, it's crazy that you would know all of these sort of cardinal do's and don'ts about music marketing and still break a lot of them, It makes you wonder, like, if no one broke those cardinal do's and don'ts, where would we be?
Where would we be?
Yeah.
It's funny because now the cardinal do's and don'ts, and I see this out in the wild a lot of the quote unquote rule breaking seems to come in the name of testing. And we did an episode about testing and what you should and shouldn't test and how you should go about testing and how we test things at IndieX. And I will say this, like, we talk about testing things in marketing all the time, but there's something to be said about like learn from the tests of others. And there's good information out there about waters that you just shouldn't bother to tread in. And it's like, okay, if you're going to run a bunch of traffic to places where it's going to be useless for you to get fans, like, just don't do it, and don't do it in the name of testing.
It's also cool because like I love that we have this big team now, and for whatever my advice is worth based on practice, it's different to have all these people who are in the driver's seat of their own career and who have done such wonderful things now telling you what the great strategies of today are, right? It's awesome to have people like Ed and Andy and Jesse and Shay come on and teach it to fellow indies, because it's like, you could listen to me, but like I'm in this Popper's son wears no shoes scenario where like I've only been marketing our band for a year and a half and I'm not at that level yet. And it's harder to stomach advice from someone who is trying to be an artist now. Before, like, it was easier when I wasn't trying to be an artist as much, because it was like, no, I'm a marketer. So this is why you should listen to me, because I do this. But now I'm in this middle period. So it's like, it's cool to have proof positive, like real deal indie artists who are crushing it come and teach you what they know from their perspective. It's like, I think it's way better for our community to have that diversity of opinion and experience.
And I think that's a huge benefit too, just for independent artists, is like you can be very fast and flexible learning and implementing what's working. Like there's no red tape if you go check out, Andy's touring workshop and you're like, oh, I want to try this. Like nothing's stopping you from building that campaign that night if you know how to do it. Versus I feel like a lot of these bigger kind of institutions and labels, it's like a long process to be like, oh, I want to do this. Well, you shouldn't do this because historically this or that. And I feel like that's a huge advantage too in 2023. It's like we just did the episode on testing, and you can test things, you can tweak them, you can see what's working. And that's a huge advantage, like you said, of like, oh, okay, this guy says this works. Let me run it for a week. If it works, great. If it doesn't, it doesn't, and move on.
So huge. Speed of implementation is so huge, and being able to just scrap ideas or pick up new ones when inspiration strikes, so huge. It is the competitive advantage that I think indie artists have against like teamed up artists. And yeah, you're right. Like I don't think I can think of an instance where someone who has self-booked and sold out tours every year for the last 5 years has come and told people, okay, go do this and you'll self-book a tour if you have X.
Yeah. And it's not even just like, here's how you physically book, right? Like Andy's selling, or even years ago, he was selling so many tickets using ads, and it's like, here's how you book, but here's how you help get people to shows, and like, here's how you talk to them, and it's all these nuanced things that are more than just like, find the booker's email, send them an email, you know, like the things you probably find on Google right now if you search how do I book my own tour. It's stuff to me that, like, even I think Jack and I a couple months ago were talking about how before Andy was at IndiePRO, we like were aware of what he was doing, and we would like message about it. And it's cool now, like 3-4 years down the road, and he's like, oh, guess what? It worked. Like, this is how you do what I did. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's also like someone who has done this is telling you, don't worry about the booker. Like, go to the venue. Like,
yeah.
Sometimes you need permission to do audacious things that are actually pretty rudimentary, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it's not that hard to get venue contact info, call up, ask, like, you know, but like, you know, Andy's going to provide like ins and outs of like those terms and stuff. But like, yeah, sometimes you just need the go ahead that like, no, this is a thing that people have done and it works.
Yeah. I'm running into that even with like stuff that we're trying to do where I'm like, why can't we do this? It's like, well, that's not how it's done. It's like, but why?
Yeah, that's the dumbest phrase ever.
It's like the whole thing of like, what would happen if you just called Taylor up? You know, have you seen that meme?
No.
Maybe somebody listening has. It's the Kardashians saying like, just call Taylor Swift up and ask her for whatever. But it's the same thing, right? Where it's like, well, what if we just did do that? And it's like, oh wait, this was great. This was a great idea. And sometimes the simplest idea that comes back to the mobility and being able to be nimble type thing is like, the simple idea is okay to test, even though it's maybe not like best practice, according to whoever set best practice.
I think if there's anything like the last 3 years have taught us and have hopefully taught artists is like the ability to be agile and nimble is a luxury that you should not take for granted and that you should take advantage of as often as you can, because something like a pandemic could come around and sweep all of your tour plans away for 2.5 years, you know? So I think that kind of, like you said, Ed, like it blows up all of the ideas of like, well, that's just the way it's done. Well, like, what if the internet went away tomorrow? Like, how would we, how would we do it then? Like I think the last 2 years have been a really good sort of history lesson for us to be a little bit more audacious and a little bit more adventurous in what we go about doing.
Yeah. I mean, I credit a lot of
100%
of our success during COVID to like, Jack, your ability to be very nimble when it came to how we were running Reels ads and opt-in ads. And we're like, oh, look, this thing has traction. You're like, we should just dump $500 a day on it and see what happens. And it's like, oh, look, it worked, like, but for real, like in a different world, people be like, "Yeah, that's a dumb idea. Don't spend that money on it."
Yeah. The real thing that kills awesome stuff is someone in the team being like, well, we should know more about this and let's talk about it. It's like, no, dude, you already screwed it up.
Yeah. Let me test it and then I'll know, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah. A lot of the things that worked early on at the outset of IndiePRO, when I was working with independent artists, was just looking at digital marketing and finding corollaries that could work for music. And then just being like, there's no precedent for this except in digital business. Let's run it up.
Yeah.
Let's try it out. Brand new, So like, I think that's where the best ideas come from. And I'm just, I think we're at a place right now with not only with IndiePRO, but with like indie artists, the world over, where it's like, we're at a place that we kind of dreamed of, which is like, we have a community. We have a lot of, we have a full range. We have hyper successful all the way to just starting out. And everyone can share ideas that could be picked up like that and just run with. And I think that's what excites me about the workshops, is that like people who have become super successful or who have helped create success for others can come and just like give you an idea to run with every month.
Yeah.
That's super cool.
On that same thread, something that I'm really excited about, and we've already been doing this on the show so far this year, but I'm really looking forward to doing more of it. And just to let you guys know as you're listening, is like one thing that Ed and I and the rest of the team have planned for Creative Juice is more storytelling, more sharing of, things that are happening in IndieX, the wins that we're seeing inside the IndiePRO community, wins that we're seeing at Indie Founder, the more that we can share those stories with you all and let you know what's going on and how you can kind of take the lessons learned and apply them to yourself and your team, I think that's going to be like massively, massively, hopefully impactful for everyone. The more that we can share case studies and really just like what we're seeing on the cutting edge is really like a big kind of pivotal shift in thinking that we're taking as far as creative juice goes. So really excited about that. And hopefully the workshops will play a hand in that as well, because the more people that come to the workshops, the more people that implement and the more stories that we have to tell. So I'm really excited.
I think a good example of like sort of, like the opportunity we have right now as a community, as indie artists overall. To take an example, like Richard Thompson came into our community in 2020, and we teach like email marketing, advertising, copywriting, online sales funnels. These are very basic digital marketing skills. They're not like revolutionary, and they're certainly like they just are, absent in terms of music marketing, but they're very well established and they're not groundbreaking. Okay. That's all we do. The X Factor, Richard Thompson took all that and created an augmented reality album and then used some of those skills to launch it in ways that we didn't specifically prescribe. So really like that, like he decided like, I'm going to do this thing. I have an idea and I'm going to use these skills. I'm going to leverage these skills to get it done and make it better. So like taking something like prescribed and doing it is cool because it gets, it gives you like the hang of it. But going off script or trying something just because like you thought it'd be cool is kind of where the best stuff happens.
For sure.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think that's becoming more and more a common staple of the community, is that like we're here to teach you like pretty basic skills that are just very opaque to most of the general public. And so we want to let you in on these skills, but then it's like be an artist with them,
Yeah.
And so hopefully we're settling into that regime in the community.
Yeah. I've been watching this documentary. This is my final thought. I've been watching this documentary on Disney Plus about ILM, like George Lucas's productions company, and like how that was started. And essentially when they filmed Star Wars, he was like, I want to do these things. And everyone was like, that's not possible. So he just went out and found people. And then it's like one of the biggest production companies today, right? And one of the things that they were saying was like, he was like, this only worked because I brought in everybody. It's pretty much what you just said, Cirque. Like I brought in everybody that had these skills, but they weren't involved in the movie industry. They had no clue what was and wasn't possible. So I put them in a warehouse and they figured out how to do it. And I was watching that and I was like, I feel like that is where independent musicians are. It's like, I don't know the first thing about a record label, but who cares? I'll come up with a solution, right? And I feel like that's how a lot of people feel. And it's really exciting because you don't know what's not possible. I think that makes sense. Yeah, you don't know what's not possible. So
big time. Yeah, like friggin' Elon Musk, right? Owner of the biggest private space company and the biggest electronic vehicle company, knew nothing about either of those things like a little over a decade or more ago. He just like read some books about rocketry, and then he was like starting to analyze the problem as someone who's not involved in rocketry. He was like, why can't we do this? Why is this way? Why are the batteries made this way? And I think taking that, all of us indie artists have an outsider perspective. We don't know how it's supposed to be done in the music industry. We don't know what's apropos. We don't know what, like, it just isn't done. So it's like, great, go be a total pain in the ass for someone else with that shit, dude. Go run it up. And yeah, I think more and more we're finding that the training and the coaching side of our business is giving people the hard skills that make them really effective at that. So like Elon Musk needed to know a fair bit about math and computing in order to achieve those things. Those are like the base skills. But the audacity to then go and be like, I think this would be cool and just try it out. Like, I think that's what we're seeing come out of our community more and more, and what we hope to facilitate.
Yeah. Awesome. Agreed.
Yeah. It's super exciting. It's super, super exciting. Cirque, thanks for being here, dude. This was a fun conversation.
No problem. Hey, if you want to attend any of our future workshops are free with IndiePRO now. So basically, workshops can be attended without IndiePRO, but you get a significant discount on the cost of attending any one workshop by just being an IndiePRO member because they're free, in addition with all the other things. So if you want to come hang out with us and learn some pretty awesome skills that can definitely make you more deadly, do so.
The future is definitely bright. We'll link to IndiePRO in the show notes so that you guys can join us. Thanks for being here, Cirque. And thank you guys for joining us for another episode of Creative Juice. We'll catch you next time. Peace out, East.
Peace out.
Can y'all really feel us? East Coast, feel us. West Coast, feel me. Say what?